Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 296. This is our week 4 NFL picks against the spread video. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing really great. I'm excited for week 4. We're 3 weeks in and my winning percentage is somehow still over 70%. I'm not going to pretend that that's going to last the whole season, but yeah, it's been a very nice 3 weeks to kickstart this thing for all of us.
Yeah, and you were how'd you do last week specifically?
Last week I went 11-5, so another double-digit win week. And it didn't really feel like one for most of it. I did get lucky a couple times, got unlucky a couple times, so it kind of balanced itself out. But yeah, it was a really rock solid week, and most of my big plays hit. The only one that really didn't was the Giants, and I didn't put a huge play on that, but I did bet it, and that was the only one that was a real disaster, I felt like.
Yeah, that Giants game, I really don't understand how they could be that bad against a team missing 10 starters. It was just ridiculous. It was my pick of the month and I lost, but overall I went 12-4 against the spread, so I was pretty happy to have the results. The other big play that lost was the Saints -3. It was a tie game, and then Taysom Hill fumbled at midfield, and I don't know. You kind of have to think about what they're doing with Taysom Hill. Like I get like using him in some trick plays when you're up 14. But in a tie game, like we take Hall of Fame quarterback off the field, I just don't like that strategy. But I guess we'll see what happens. The Saints have a interesting game this week, I think. So we'll talk about that in a bit. So might as well start with the Thursday night game, the Broncos at the Jets. This line opened up Broncos -2 when it went to 3, and then it was announced that the Broncos starting quarterback would be Brett Rippon instead of Jeff Driscoll, who is Brett Rippon is Mark Rippon's nephew, I believe. Mark Rippon, former quarterback of the Redskins. So this is his first start. So I guess we'll see how he does. But who do you like in this game?
Yeah, so this is a terrible game to kick off the week. I'm kind of excited to watch it because of how bad it could end up being. And I'm sure we're all very much looking forward to this Sam Darnold Brett Rippon matchup at the start of the season. But I think I'm going to be on the Broncos here. This would be a no bet if it was a Sunday game, so probably a 1-unit play for me because I'm 8-1 in prime time, and I got to keep riding the streak. The Broncos, the reason I like them is I just don't think that the Jets are going to play hard. I think they know that if they lose this game, Adam Gase could be out as the head coach. I think there's a serious motivation going against the Jets winning. And we've heard rumors that the players just do not like Adam Gase outside of Sam Darnold. So I could easily see the Jets just kind of punting on this one and saying, hey, maybe if we just don't show up at all, then he'll be gone and we can move on. Greg Williams will take over in the interim and then we can start fresh again. But there's reason not to like the Broncos too. I mean, you've got all of these dudes on the Broncos hurt. They're missing 4 of their pass rushers / defensive linemen now that Jarrell Casey's out. They're missing their right tackle from UMass, Elijah Wilkinson, and he was already their backup right tackle. And then, no Cortland Sutton, no Drew Lock. So there's so many injury issues. I actually like Rippon, and he is Mark Rippon's nephew. I thought he should have been drafted last year. He went undrafted, but has hung around with the Broncos. I think he's going to do better than Jeff Driscoll. Driscoll held on to the ball too long, tried to make plays because he's mobile, but ended up getting sacked a ton against the Buccaneers. I think Rippon, you're going to see more of a quick passing game, just kind of get the ball out of his hand, get it to the playmakers on the outside, whether it's KJ Hamler or Melvin Gordon out of the backfield or whatever they do. So I think they'll be able to make the offense move a little bit. And it's not like the Jets have a good defense. So I'm going with the Broncos probably for 1 unit. Again, I'm not very confident in this. I'm only betting it because it's the Thursday night game. But I think the line coming down, too, I don't think there's a big difference between Rippon and Driscoll. If anything, I think Rippon being unproven is a good thing. Kind of reminds me of the Nick Mullins replacing C.J. Beathard a couple years ago. So I'll be on Denver in this one.
Yeah, why is this line moving this way? It just doesn't make sense to me. When this was Broncos -3, I was like, okay, I'll take the Jets just because, I feel like the most likely results of this game is Denver winning by 3 or the Jets winning by 3. But now that it's -1, I think I'm going to be on Denver as well with you because, I don't get the Jeff Driscoll hype. Like, there's so many people on Twitter saying Jeff Driscoll is great and everything, like, or at least he's like a good quarterback. Like, he has a good arm, but you're right. Like, he's processed information way too slowly. He was not accurate, and so Brett Rippon can't be that much worse than Driscoll. So if this line were still Denver -3, I think I would still side with the Jets maybe, but I think you made a great point about saying that the Jets just might mail this game in because this might be Adam Gase's final game. The injury report is going to be important. The Jets might get some players back. So like if the Jets get a Jamison Crowder back and maybe some offensive linemen, I'd consider a switch to the Jets. But right now I'm going to be on Denver with you.
Yeah, I think it just makes too much sense. Like the line shouldn't have moved. Like there's no difference between the quarterbacks and the motivation. And I we'll go through these picks and you'll understand why I was in like a big I want to fire these coaches move last week for some of these guys. But I think we're really staring down what could be the end of the Adam Gase era unless he can somehow really just rile up his guys in a way that we truly haven't seen from him at all this year.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to motivate the team when you traded their best player away. So I don't really see it happening. So we'll see. Before we move on to the Sunday games, please hit subscribe or the like button if you're watching on YouTube, or share this with someone else who might like football. So that would mean a lot to us. It would really help out the show. All right, let's get to the Sunday games. The first Sunday game is Colts at the Bears. The sign open up Colts -1. It's up to -2.5, so not quite -3 yet. The Bears are going to start Nick Foles over Mitchell Trubisky, and I can't believe there was some controversy over that after the game. Like, people were like, "Oh, are the Bears going to start?" Like, of course they're going to start Nick Foles. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Colts. I do like the Bears better with Nick Foles. I think he's just a better quarterback. He does more for them as a passer. Obviously a little less mobile, but you can get by without that. But I'm still on the Colts here. I just think that the Bears are like, this is a bad logic thing, but the Bears are due to lose. They're 3-0 right now, and they could easily be 0-3. But last week against the Falcons, before putting in Nick Foles, it looked like they were going to get absolutely crushed, and then the Falcons just kind of collapsed under their own weight, as they're wont to do under Dan Quinn. And then Nick Foles did his best to lead the Bears back, and he did a good job. And I think Nick Foles is going to be good for this team, but I just think the rest of the Bears team doesn't match up particularly well against the Colts. I think the Colts defensive line in particular is underrated. I think they'll be able to get some pressure on Nick Foles. I think that'll be a big element of the game for Justin Houston, and DeForest Buckner can get in there and kind of make him have to move, because Foles is kind of a statue in the pocket. He's not very good moving around. I think that will help the Colts defense. And then I think Indy should move the ball pretty well on offense. Their running game is pretty solid, and Chicago was just gashed by Atlanta in that regard, by their running backs. Not necessarily always on the ground, but Brian Hill had a long touchdown reception. Todd Gurley ripped off some good chunk gains. And then obviously Matt Ryan took them apart through the air. And I know the Falcons have a really good offense, and Phillip Rivers isn't as good as Matt Ryan at this stage, but I feel like Frank Reich's going to have a plan in place to move the ball through the air and on the ground against this Bears defense. So I'm going to stick with the Colts here. If this number gets up to 3, then I might be kind of a little bit more hesitant to bet them. But for now, I'm on the Colts -2.5 for 2 units. I'm fairly confident that they should win this game. But I could see a case for the Bears if the number got to +3, but I'm definitely sticking with the Colts at this point.
Yeah, I think I'd make a case for the Bears at +3 for sure. I think this is another case where you could say the most likely results of this game are the Colts winning by 3 and the Bears winning by 3. So if you take the +3, you either get the win or the push. So I think at +3, it might be worth it to take the Bears. And even if you like the Bears, you definitely have to get +3. Like, don't settle for +2. You could probably buy it up somewhere. So I think I would do that. At +2.5, I'm kind of like wishy-washy on this game. Like, I can make a case for either team. The computer model thinks the Bears should be -4, which is kind of like surprising to me. But I do agree with what you say about the Colts having a good matchup against the Bears. The Bears linebackers aren't very good, so I think the Colts are going to get their tight ends and the running backs matched up against the Bears linebackers. But then again, like, I like the Bears a lot more with Nick Foles. I think he gives them some life that they didn't have before. And while I think the Colts might get pressure on Nick Foles, I also like the Bears receivers against the Colts defensive backs. So I think Allen Robinson could have a big game, and Anthony Miller, as crazy as that comeback was for the Bears, they had 2 touchdowns taken away from them too. So while they won 30-26, it could have been 44-26 if you think about it that way. So I like Foles as an underdog. So I'm leaning toward the Bears, but this is not going to be a bet for me unless I get +3.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to do it. Again, I can see the case for Foles. My big thing is I want to see him come into a game and play well against the secondary that isn't Atlanta's, because Atlanta's secondary is the worst in the league. And it is close because Dallas and Seattle have been so bad so far. But I just think that Foles will have a tougher time throwing on this Colts secondary, though. I do like the matchup specifically of Allen Robinson against these Colts corners, but I think Frank Reich, again, will find a way to at least scheme against that a little bit. And if Foles is under pressure, I just don't trust him. But yeah, this is a game I'm not super high on, but I'm kind of gung-ho about betting the Colts at this point because I think they're underrated league-wide. So we'll see what ends up happening, though.
Yeah, I think they're underrated too. This guy's saying we have an anti-Bears bias. I just picked the Bears, so so much for that theory. All right, next game, Saints at the Lions. This line opened up Saints -5.5. It's down to 4, so looking like some sharp money coming in on the Lions, which is a little bit surprising. So who do you like this game?
Yeah, if you'll remember last week, I said I didn't want to play the Saints against the Packers, and I ended up going with the Packers +3. And I was kind of hoping that the Packers would end up beating them outright and covering, which is what they did, because this is a great time to play the Saints, in my opinion. I mean, they didn't match up very well against the Packers without Michael Thomas, I thought. They had Alvin Kamara, who had an incredible game and won me a very important game in my fantasy league that I was trailing by quite a bit of points in. So thank you for that, Alvin Kamara. But aside from him, they didn't really have a ton to attack the Packers with. They still were able to score 27 points to keep themselves in the game until that Taysom Hill fumble that you referenced. So I feel like a lot of people were just surprised that they lost and didn't really look into how that game actually unfolded. So now they're being underrated a little bit against the Lions, and they match up very well with the Lions. The Lions are a bottom 5 run defense. They're not going to be able to contain Alvin Kamara at all. And then you've got Latavius Murray, who was pretty good between the tackles against the Packers. So they could just ride those two guys a lot of the day. And if they get Michael Thomas back, this pass offense should be in much, much better shape, because the Lions have good players in the secondary, but they're not healthy back there. And I don't know if Desmond Trufant's supposed to come back this week. I know Jeff Okudah also got banged up last week after playing his first action. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. If they're both playing, then I like the Saints a little less in that area, but I'm going to like them no matter what in this game, because they have the motivation to win this game. They've lost 2 in a row, and the Lions are coming off of like a surprise road win over the Cardinals. So they could come out a little flat being like, hey, we just beat one of the better teams in the NFC. But then, of course, they come home and play another very good team in their home stadium. So I like the Saints here. -4, I think is a solid number. Probably go 3 or 4 units on them. I like fading the Lions because I don't think their defense is very good. And even though they can keep pace on offense, I think we've seen the Saints at times this year been able to make plays. They did it against Tom Brady, and if they can do it against Matthew Stafford, they should win this game, I think, easily.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm definitely going to be on the Saints with you. What you said about Desmond Trufant is definitely important. So we'll see what his injury situation is, as well as Okudah's. If 2 of their corners are out, along with Justin Coleman, that means that you're going to have Drew Brees and Michael Thomas potentially, and then all the other weapons the Saints have against Detroit secondary that's banged up. So that's a big advantage for the Saints. And yeah, Drew Brees losing 2 games in a row is pretty big. He's 19-8 against the spread off 2 consecutive losses. So like it kind of makes sense, like I don't like trends usually, but it makes, it's pretty logical to bet first of all, good quarterbacks just off a single loss, but then off 2 losses, like they're going to be very motivated, like you said. Also, the Lions, we saw what Aaron Jones did to them a couple weeks ago. So, good luck trying to stop Alvin Kamara. Like, it's just not going to pan out for the Lions. Yeah, so I think this line is a bit too low. If you think about it, like if that win over the Cardinals never happened, And the Lions were still 0-2 coming off that blowout loss to the Packers. What would the spread be? I think it'd be like 6 or something like that. So I think you might be looking at something like that for this game. The computer says it should be Saints -5. So not a lot of value there, but I still think it's a little shy of what it should be. So I'm going to be on the Saints. Depending on what the injuries are, it could be a pretty high bet.
Yeah, and I agree with the 6 on the Saints if the Lions didn't win last week. And, if the Saints had beaten the Packers too, like they weren't all that far away from having that happen. I think you could easily get to 6. You could even convince me maybe it could go up to 7. So, I think we're getting pretty good value here for sure.
Yeah. All right. Next game, Cardinals at the Panthers. Cardinals open up -4. It's down to 3.5. So this is the other half of that Detroit-Arizona game we were talking about. So Kyler Murray coming off his first loss. How do you think he's going to rebound? Who do you like in this game?
I like the Cardinals a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to end up betting this one just because I don't love the number. Also, the number one reason that I don't like this to an extent is because Teddy Bridgewater, who I wrote his name as Spready Bridgewater here because he always covers the spread, except for the first 2 games of this season. So I think the Cardinals match up very well against the Panthers defense. There aren't a lot of teams that don't, but the Cardinals have a lot of running weapons between Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmonds, and then Kyler Murray. They'll be able to take apart that Panthers run defense that has not been very good this year and has allowed an NFL high 7 rushing touchdowns to running backs. So the Cardinals are going to have to beat them on the ground. They haven't really needed to use Kenyon Drake to win games so much this year. I think it's going to be a big week to kind of get him more involved. Really have him carry the offense and then let Kyler Murray run off play action and then just cause havoc in the Carolina secondary. But I do think the Panthers on offense are pretty good. They have 3 good receiving weapons. Teddy Bridgewater doesn't turn the ball over, which is pretty big. And I just think that the Cardinals aren't necessarily going to have trouble slowing them down, but I think stopping them entirely is not going to happen as often as we'd think. And we saw last week against the Chargers, the Panthers did a pretty good job of moving the ball consistently. They didn't find success in the red zone, but they kept that game close and were able to win it by just scoring points early and often, even in 3-point increments. So I think the Panthers can keep this close. I think the Cardinals ultimately win because they have the motivation coming off of a loss. They'll want to prove themselves. And, the Panthers aren't that good, but I do see a world in which the Panthers start off well, find a way to contain Murray a little bit early on, build up a lead, and Arizona has to come back. So that's why I'm not super high on this game, but I do like the Cardinals at this number.
Okay, yeah, I'm not high on this game either. So we're going to disagree again, but I'm not going to bet Carolina in all likelihood unless something shows up on the injury report. It's kind of discouraged by what Kyler Murray did last week. He kept staring down his receivers, which I thought, like at first hand, like I was like, this is pretty surprising. He's been playing so well, but then I kind of remembered that he's only in his second year. So this sort of inconsistency is bound to happen, I guess. But that's something he has to clean up because if he keeps doing that, he's going to keep throwing interceptions. So, not that this matchup's very difficult for him, but then again, the Detroit matchup should have been very easy too. And he lost to the Lions at home. So I think he could definitely lose to the Panthers on the road, especially with the receivers the Panthers have. They have so much talent at that position. And Arizona's cornerbacks have not played well this year. Patrick Peterson's not even playing that well. And then you have Isaiah Simmons, who's barely been on the field. So Arizona's had a lot of trouble covering players. And the Panthers, even with McCaffrey out, you have Mike Davis who's catching passes as well. So I think the Panthers should be able to move the ball on Arizona. Conversely, I think Arizona will do the same thing. So I think this would be a high scoring game. And I think this line's a touch too high. I made it. I think I made it Arizona -2, and the computer model thinks Arizona -3 is correct. So we're off by like 1 or 2 points, or I guess a half or 1.5 points. But we're going across 3, and I think the most likely result of this game is Arizona winning by 3. So if you take the +3.5, you probably win more often than not. So that's why I'm taking Carolina, but I don't really see a good reason to bet this game.
Yeah, I think you and I are both thinking similarly in terms of how we evaluate the matchup, and I understand why you would take the +3.5 here because I do think a field goal game is definitely possible. I just have this like strong inkling that Panthers coming off a win might end up being flat because they know that they're not the best team in the world. Like they're probably not going to go to the playoffs barring some surprise. And I think it's just a motivational factor for me. But again, I don't love this game. At most, I would bet one unit on it, and I'm probably not going to bet it. So I think there are other better numbers on the slate. But there are quite a few games this week where I feel like the line is just half a point off from what I need it to be to want to bet it. So I think we're going to see quite a few of those later on.
Yeah, I think the lines are tighter this week for sure. But this game I like more. Jaguars at the Bengals. This line opened up Bengals -3, and it's still -3 across the board. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I think I like the Jaguars in this one. This is one I like better, but I'm not super high on this one because I could see a case for the Bengals. But I mean, the Bengals, they've looked great with Joe Burrow at quarterback. Their defense is going to get healthier if they get Geno Atkins back, and they'll have a chance to pressure Gardner Minshew. But I think Minshew is going to be better off because I think Jacksonville will probably get DJ Chark back. They were missing him against the Dolphins, and that really hurt their offense because he's the best receiver on that team. He threatens defenses deep, and without him, the Dolphins and their good secondary were just able to contain the passing attack and get some pressure on Minshew and make him have to settle for checkdowns. I don't think that happens against the Bengals because the Bengals secondary has some holes in it. I think it's weaker overall than the Dolphins secondary. And then if Chark's there, it's a game changer for the Jaguars. So provided that Chark has progressed from that chest injury and he's coming back, I think that should be good. The other big thing here is the Jaguars have extra rest, and normally I don't buy into that too much with a coach like Doug Marrone is a solid coach. I don't think he's a great coach, but I think he's solid. But the Bengals just played an overtime game. So, with that extra time to prepare and then the Bengals having played a lot more than the Jaguars recently, I think a little bit fresher legs could definitely help the Jaguars in this one. So I'm on the Jaguars probably for 1 or 2 units at +3 because I think this is going to be a close game and should be settled by a field goal in either direction.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I like the Jaguars quite a bit here, and I think you're right on point with talking about like how fresh these teams are. With the Jaguars, it's such like a huge dichotomy because the Jaguars, like you said, coming off the Thursday game, they've had extra time to think about how they were embarrassed at home by the Dolphins, and then you have the Bengals coming off not just an overtime game but a tie. Like they went the distance the whole 70 minutes. Teams coming off ties since 1989. That's the year I went back to. 9-17 against the spread. So it kind of makes sense, if they play the whole slate, the whole game, they're going to be exhausted the following week. So yeah, it makes sense for the Bengals to be tired here. And it's a great point you made is about DJ Chark. Like we've seen teams missing their number one receivers this year. I think it's been more apparent than ever how important these guys are. You have Texans missing Hopkins. You have the Vikings without Stephon Diggs. Both the teams are 0-3. The Saints without Michael Thomas, they lost both those games. The Lions without Kenny Golladay, they lost both those games. So, these number one receivers are so important to these teams, and the Jaguars are missing DJ Chark. So, of course, they struggled against the Dolphins. And I assume Chark is going to be back. And if so, I'm definitely going to be on the Jaguars. And I'm also not sure if the Bengals deserve to be favored by 3 over anyone yet, except for maybe the Jets and Redskins, Giants, the garbage teams. But like the Jaguars, we thought they were garbage to the beginning of the year, but they were competitive, against the Titans in week 2, and they beat the Colts in week 1. So they're better than we thought they were. So I think they rebound, and I think they win outright, and I like them for about 3 units.
Yeah, I think for the Jaguars, we just underrated their passing weapons and the effectiveness of Gardner Minshew. I think that was our mistake. And then obviously James Robinson kind of coming out of nowhere to be a very effective running back. That's led to them having a good offense. And then they do have some talent on the defensive line, even though they've traded away a lot of good players. So I think we were definitely a little bit off there. But I completely agree with you on the point about the Bengals not being deserving to be favored by 3. Like you think about it, because Joe Burrow's, I think, covered in every start except the first one where they pushed. But the Bengals still haven't won a game yet. So why should they be favored by 3 points? And they couldn't even beat the Eagles last week. And the Eagles were completely decimated by injuries. So I think the fresh Jaguars, it just makes a lot of sense. And evidently my dad is eating chicken wings right now and wants to let me know that they're very good. So I'm looking forward to eating those later.
Very nice. Real quick, you're right about the Jaguars being better, like James Robinson and the receivers, but I think their offensive line has been a lot better than we thought they would be too. Kind of surprising. I thought they wouldn't be able to block at all this year, but they've done well. And so if somehow they still end up with Trevor Lawrence, like he's going to be in a good situation with all those receivers and the blocking. And who knows, maybe James Robinson is someone they want to keep around and be their lead back. He's done a great job. So. We'll see. They just need to work on their defense, which is just terrible. Next game is Browns at the Cowboys. The line opened up Cowboys -5.5. It's down to 4.5, and there's been some sharp money coming in on Cleveland. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I love the Browns in this one. Like, I just don't understand why Dallas is favored by this many points. You look at these two teams; they're very similar in how they're built. Like, Dallas has an excellent offense. They have 3 really great receivers. We've seen guys like Dalton Schultz and Cedric Wilson step up in recent weeks too to give them like 4 really good weapons. And then you've got a solid offensive line and Ezekiel Elliott coming out of the backfield. But they do have holes at the tackle position because Lael Collins and Tyron Smith have been hurt. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But then you look at Cleveland, and they have 2 excellent running backs in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, 2 really great receivers in Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. Granted, they don't always get as involved in the game plan as they should, but they're still talented. And then they have a couple good tight ends in Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant to go along with Baker Mayfield. So I think these teams are pretty evenly matched on offense. And I think the Browns might even have an advantage on defense because I think they have a better defensive line than the Cowboys. And granted, their back 7 hasn't been great this year outside of Denzel Ward because of injuries to Mac Wilson and Greedy Williams and Grant Delpit. But I still think that their defense is stronger than the Cowboys. The Cowboys haven't been able to contain anyone at all at any point this year. Well, actually, no, they contained the Rams in the second half of the first game, but at that point, they had already given up 20 points. Last week, we saw them get torn apart by the Seahawks. The previous week, they were torn apart by the Falcons. And I just think Baker Mayfield's going to be able to keep pace with the Cowboys on offense. So I think there's a chance the Browns could win this game. I don't know if it happens outright, but I think they should absolutely cover because I could envision a scenario in which the Browns get up big early because they take advantage of that Dallas defense, which is possibly going to be missing Chidobe Awuzie, which is not good because they're already not good at cornerback. And then you're talking about the Dallas offense. If they still have holes at the tackle position and they're facing Myles Garrett, that could really rattle Dak Prescott. So I'm all over the Browns here. I'll probably go for 3 or 4 units. I'll need to check the injury report to see how the tackles are doing. But I feel like this game, this spread is just way off. It's one of my favorite lines being off of the week because I feel like we can really take advantage of this, especially since we're going through key numbers of 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's for sure. I completely agree. This line's way off. I made this line Dallas -1.5. I actually have Cleveland slightly better than Dallas. And then Dallas gets 2 points for being at home. So that's how I came up with that. The Cowboys are the most overrated team in the NFL, I think. Like, right now, like maybe in a few weeks when they get a lot of players back from injury, they'll be better. But right now they're missing 8 starters, I think, maybe 9 starters. And it's multiple players at a position. So like they're down 2 linebackers, they're down 2 corners, they're down 2 tackles. So it's pretty brutal for them right now. And as a result of that, they haven't covered the spread at all this year. And they would be 0-3 straight up if that onside kick didn't roll their way. So, who are they to be favored by 4.5 over the Browns, who are getting healthier? The Browns in week 1 were missing a lot of players like the Cowboys are now. But they've gotten back a lot of players from injury. And as a result, they beat the Redskins pretty soundly last week. And I was pretty big on the Browns for that reason. And I think the Browns are a little underrated because people remember what happened in week 1 against the Ravens. But the Browns can be better now. So, yeah, I like Cleveland a lot here. Like you said, injury reports can be important, but this could be one of my top plays of the week.
Yeah, I think it is going to probably end up being my top play of the week. There's just not a lot to like about the Cowboys. I totally agree with you. Like they could be 0-3 and people just overrate them because they're the Cowboys. And yeah, I'm not trying to take away anything from their offense. Their offense is really good, but their defense is bad and their team in general isn't healthy. So you can have as many weapons as you want, but it doesn't always translate to wins. I mean, we've seen that in Atlanta last year and this year. Atlanta's 0-3 despite having a really good receiving core and a quarterback. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys are kind of in a similar situation there. So, Yeah, I'll probably lock this one in pretty soon just to avoid the sharp money moving it too much. Though I will want to see the injury report, so might wait another day and just see what the practice report looks like.
Yeah, it's always a tough spot. Like it's the old question. Like, do you go with more information or do you go with a better number? It's tough, and I don't think there's a right answer for that. But something I mentioned 2 weeks ago when we had a similar game, Atlanta at Dallas. Usually, if the line moves this way and it keeps going down, you still want to go with the underdog in that case, or go with the sharp side, because the line movement doesn't change the result of the game against the spread. So personally, I'd rather wait for the information. But yeah, I wouldn't blame you for locking in plus 4.5, because this game could definitely fall in 4. And if you get plus 3.5, like, you're going to feel stupid if you didn't lock in 4.5. So it's a tough spot. So anyway, the next game's a little problematic here. The Vikings at the Texans. This line opened up Texans -4. It went down to 3.5, and then it shot up to 4.5 on Tuesday afternoon because the news came out that 3 Titans players tested positive for the virus. And now this game might be postponed. We don't know what's going to happen. No Vikings have tested positive yet, which is good news. But they might, they shut down operations for Minnesota. Like, they're not practicing right now. So we don't know what's going to happen. So I don't know what you wanted to say about this game. This line is off the board at every sportsbook right now. So I guess take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the 2 games that are in question, I think this one is far more likely to happen depending on the results of the COVID tests that they're undoubtedly doing now and will be doing throughout the coming days. They could reschedule it out of an abundance of caution or just push it back a couple days just to let them test more. I don't know what will happen. I think if this game is going to happen this week, though, and this line does open back up at -4, I think that'll be the number to be at. I would prefer the Vikings in that one. I think Mike Zimmer has the coaching edge over Bill O'Brien by quite a lot. And, even though the Vikings have a weakness at corner that Houston can exploit, but the Houston defense hasn't been good against the run. They allow the most rushing yards to running backs in the league. And then against the pass, they haven't been great either. They've been better, but I feel like Minnesota can move the ball. So I think Minnesota would have a legitimate chance to win. Obviously, there's still a lot of questions, and the Vikings team may not be able to practice and may be very distracted by what's going on. So it'd probably be a no bet for me until we know exactly what's happening or if the facility opens back up. But I would still favor Minnesota just because of the coaching advantage. And I think that even if the players aren't on the field, Mike Zimmer can kind of communicate to them over Zoom or whatever, like, this is what we're going to be doing, and this is how we're going to do it. So I trust Zimmer, but this is absolutely a no bet until we know more.
Yeah, I agree. Before the news broke, I planned on picking the Vikings. You mentioned Mike Zimmer over Bill O'Brien. That's like that is definitely a coaching mismatch if you ever seen one, for sure. Bill O'Brien does not deserve to be favored by more than 4, over anyone right now, considering the roster he has. And also, I think the Vikings kind of. I talked about how last week it was tough to take them. I eventually did pick them, but I thought it was difficult to bet them because it was kind of like catching a falling knife, to use the stock market reference, because we never know like how bad they would be, because they were just brutal the first 2 weeks, and I thought we needed to see signs of life in them, and we did last week. Like, they were up 24-12 over the Titans. Justin Jefferson was a big difference. Just playing him over Olabisi Johnson, like, that should have been a no-brainer. I don't know what took him so long, but he was amazing in that game. And like, that's what they missed, because Stephon Diggs was out. Now they have, I don't know if you can call him a number 1 receiver yet, but he's definitely at least the number 2 right now. So I like the momentum the Vikings have, and the Texans can't stop anything. They can't stop the run or the pass. So I thought the Vikings could move the ball well against the Texans and then cover, or maybe even win outright. But then this news broke, and I was kind of like thinking the same thing you were, where, the Vikings could either be distracted or just not prepared because they're not practicing. So it's a tough spot. If they end up playing this game, I'm probably going to be on, I'm probably going to be on the Texans, I think, if the Vikings can't practice at all, and if it sounds like they're going to be distracted. But if the Vikings can get at least 1 practice in, and it doesn't sound like they're distracted, I'm going to pick the Vikings.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it. Like, I can't bring myself to pick the Texans no matter what because I just can't trust Bill O'Brien. We go over this. We went over this almost every week last year, and I think I picked against Texans all but one time, and it didn't pan out every time. But yeah, if the Vikings don't go on the practice field, it is going to be very hard for them to cover this spread. So I'm more than anything else interested to see how the NFL handles this and whether or not this game will happen. But I'll lean on the Vikings, but I don't think I can bet this one really either way because I'm not betting on Bill O'Brien in any circumstances, and I don't think I'll be able to bet on the Vikings confidently this week.
Yeah, probably a good move not to bet on Bill O'Brien under any circumstances. I think you're doing well if you haven't done that. All right, next game, Seahawks at the Dolphins. This line opened up Seahawks -7. It's down to 6.5. In most sports books, there is a 7 still at BetUS. So if you want the Dolphins, you can get +7 there. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Seahawks, but I'm not wild about this line because I think this is kind of a little bit of a sneaky line. Like on paper, you think to yourself, yeah, this should be pretty easy, like going Seattle over Miami. But Seattle's pass defense has been absolutely terrible this year. It's been them and the Vikings and the Falcons have just been absolutely awful against wide receivers in particular. But on offense, Seattle's been awesome as well. So they've kind of won in shootouts so far. I think Miami might have the personnel needed to take down some of the Seattle secondary because they have Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, and Mike Gesicki. That'll be hard for Seattle to contain without a pass rush. And given that Jamal Adams might be banged up and there's some other guys for the Seahawks that suffered injuries. So I can absolutely see the case for Miami here, especially since Seattle's allowed at least 25 points in all 3 games for an average of 28.6. So you're talking about them having to, if they allow their average amount of points, score 35 again to cover that, which they could easily do. But I don't know if it's going to happen every week. And so I'm not big on this game. I'm on the Seahawks, and I just laid out a great case for Miami. So basically, the reason I'm on the Seahawks is I don't want to bet against a red-hot Russell Wilson, but I might change my mind depending on the injury report. If Chris Carson can't go for the Seahawks on offense, I think they'll have a harder time running the ball. They'll still be able to move it, but if they become one-dimensional against Miami's good secondary, it could be a problem. But then defense is really where it matters the most because you got Jamal Adams, Jordan Brooks. Those guys banged up. If they can't play, I may switch my pick to Miami here because I just think this is just a little bit too many points to give to a team with such a bad pass defense against an offense that can move the ball and can score like we saw last week.
I actually think Seattle's pass defense is pretty underrated. Like I know their numbers look abysmal right now, but if you think about it, like week 2, they had Quandre Diggs get kicked out of the game, and then week 3, Jamal Adams got hurt. Quentin Dunbar didn't play. I just think they've had bad luck with injuries. I think if everyone is healthy, if Dunbar comes back and Diggs doesn't get kicked out and Adams is healthy, I think they can actually do well against the pass. So I think that could be something to keep in mind going forward. The problem is that we don't know who's going to be healthy in this game. Like you brought up how Adams is banged up, like he may not play. Who knows if Dunbar is going to be able to come back. So right now, Seattle's pass defense, while underrated for the long haul, I think right now is pretty bad. And that's something the Dolphins could take advantage of with Devontae Parker, Preston Williams. This game really depends on the injury report. Like kind of like you said, so many Seattle players got hurt last week, and we had Seattle in our joint super contest entry, and they were up 30-15. I was feeling confident, and then just kept seeing Seattle players fall like one by one. It was just brutal. And at the end, I thought there was no chance the Seahawks would cover. But then Russell Wilson came through in the end. But it's going to be tough to cover 6.5 if half the roster is injured, But then again, if Seattle gets a lot of players back and they're healthy, I think they should have no issues with the Dolphins at all. So yeah, it's tough to call this right now without seeing any injury report at all. I'm going to have a stronger opinion on it, I'm sure, on Friday or Saturday, especially when I post my Saturday notes come the weekend. But yeah, right now, I guess I would lean toward Seattle because Russell Wilson, but that could easily change depending on what we see.
Yeah, I think we're in the same boat. And just to respond to your point about the Seattle pass defense, they definitely have the personnel back there to be successful. Like Quentin Dunbar, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, all those guys are really good players. My concern, weirdly, is more with the pass rush, and I think that's why their pass defense has been so bad. It's because they can't get any pressure. So quarterbacks just wait back there until their receivers break open. And as we all know, if you give a quarterback like 5 seconds in the pocket, someone's eventually going to break open because the cornerbacks and safeties are just trying to react to what other players are doing. So I don't think it's so much a personnel issue as it is related to pass rush, or, they have the personnel when healthy to be effective. But I just don't know if they will continue to be effective if they don't address the pass rush in some way, shape, or form.
I agree. I mean, the pass rush is bad. I thought there was a chance that some of the young players would develop, like they have Darrell Taylor, LJ Collier. Maybe that happens in the second half of the year, or maybe they trade for someone. I could see them doing either happening. But yeah, right now the pass rush is the issue, not the actual defensive backs. You're right. And what Rich is saying is kind of what I'm thinking. Like betting against Russell Wilson, he's this hot. Like it seems like a losing proposition. So I'm definitely not going to. I wouldn't say that, but I would definitely. The only way I would bet against Seattle right now is if half their roster is injured. So that's what I would do it. And I wanted to address this from Michael. He says the Seahawks have to travel from coast to coast. This has actually been a good spot for Seattle. They're 12-6 against the spread under Pete Carroll in these early East Coast games. So it's actually pretty good for Seattle. They somehow thrive doing this. And I've actually noticed that Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay have also done well in these situations. So I'm thinking that these coaches have kind of figured out the dilemma, because in the past, the West Coast team traveling to the East Coast to play an early start, you would just bet it. You would bet against it, not automatically, and you do well, but not anymore. It's definitely not the case anymore. All right. Next game. Speaking of, early teams on the East Coast, Chargers at the Buccaneers. The line opened up Buccaneers -5. It's up to 7. So who do you like in this game?
Okay, I did not know that it had moved 2 full points, so that's that changes my opinion maybe a little bit. But I still do like the Bucs here even at -7. I'm just, when watching the Bucs, I feel like we're really starting to see what we expected. I know they just played Denver, a really badly beat up team, but they crushed them, and Tom Brady seems to be, building some good chemistry between his receivers, especially Mike Evans. They were able to get the tight ends involved more in the passing game this past week, especially Gronk. So I think they're starting to come together more on offense. The Chargers, meanwhile, are starting Justin Herbert. He's a rookie who's looked good at times, but he's going to have some mistakes. We saw a crossbody throw against the Chiefs that ended up getting picked off. So I think that was a happen from him. And Tampa's just so good against the running backs. I think Herbert might have to do a lot in this game, and that he could be forced into some mistakes. Chargers are also down a lot of quality defenders, including Chris Harris, Melvin Ingram, and Derwin James. So I think their defense is a little weaker than it's been in the past. I am concerned, though, that the Bucs are playing on Thursday night against the Bears. So they're going to have a little bit of a look-ahead factor here. That, coupled with the line movement, is going to drop my unit count on this. So I'm probably going to be on the Bucs, maybe for a unit, maybe 2 if I get more confident. But I just think that they're the better team here. But I could see a world in which the Chargers cover this. But I also want to say this is somewhat of a revenge game for Tom Brady, because I think the Chargers could have pursued him and instead decided to go to Tyrod Taylor. So maybe he uses that as motivation. I don't know.
I didn't even thought of that. That's interesting. I actually like the Chargers a lot here. One of the key factors is the Thursday night look ahead game. Usually if you bet a big favorite like this before a Thursday night game, usually you do quite well. And the Buccaneers, they play the Bears on Thursday night, and you're like, okay, you might say, oh, whatever, who cares about the Bears? But the Bears are 3-0 right now, and if they beat the Colts, and the Bucs won't know the result of that game while they're playing this one. Let's just say the Bears beat the Colts and they're 4-0, and the Buccaneers are 3-1. that's an important game because if the Bears beat the Bucs, they're going to be 2 games back, and the Bears are going to have the tiebreaker. So they'd have to automatically pass the Bears by a few games just to make sure they have the number 1 seed in the conference. Like it is an important game, and this is a non-conference game against a team they only see once every 4 years. And I think the Chargers match up well against Tom Brady because they have the formula, like the formula to beat these quarterbacks. And I heard it. When Patrick Mahomes was dominating the Ravens, like everyone's like, oh, how do you stop this? Like the formula is what the Niners did in the Super Bowl is you pressure with 4 consistently, and you have to get there obviously, and then you play the tight coverage underneath. And the Chargers can do that. They did that week 2 against Patrick Mahomes, and they almost won. So I think the Chargers could pressure Tom Brady pretty heavily, and Tom Brady might be missing Chris Godwin, who got hurt last week, and he has Mike Evans, who doesn't seem like he's 100%. His stat line, by the way, 2 catches, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns, which I thought was very interesting. It was almost like Jerome Bettis's 5 carries, 1 yard, 3 touchdowns that he had in 2004. But yeah, anyway, the Buccaneers are banged up at receiver, and I think that kind of washes out what you were saying about the Chargers having the injuries. So I just think the Chargers should keep this game close. And I think this line's a little inflated. I made it 5.5, and the advanced spread in this game is 4.5. So this line moved 2.5 points based on what happened last week. And I don't think that's warranted. So I like the Chargers quite a bit.
Yeah, no, you make really good points, and I'm definitely dropping my unit count on this one based off what you said, and I can see a way the Chargers might cover. So I might have to reconsider this one a little bit because I don't think I was taking into an account enough the receiver injuries for Tampa, because I knew Chris Godwin probably wasn't going to play, but I kind of forgot like how banged up Mike Evans has been, because he has really just been that short touchdown catching guy. But how's he going to catch those touchdowns if they can't get down there? So I'll definitely reconsider that, but for now, I'm going to stick with the Bucs just because I think their defense could create problems for Justin Herbert. But I agree that the line has moved too much. I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Herbert can have a meltdown for sure. Like he could have 3 pick sixes for all we know. But I do like Hunter Henry against the Tampa linebackers. Like Tampa has been bad against tight ends, and I think Hunter Henry should do pretty well. All right, next game. We don't know if this is going to be a game. The Steelers at the Titans. The Steelers open up -1. When the news broke about the Titans testing positive, this shot up to 2.5. And now this is off the board everywhere. The 3 Titans who tested positive are Daquan Jones, Tommy Hudson, and Bo Brinkley. So Daquan Jones, the only significant player as far as this game is concerned. So like if they play this game and those 3 are out, like Jones would be the only one. Although I guess Brinkley is their long snapper, so they'd have to find a new long snapper. But anyway, I assume that this game will be postponed in some fashion. I don't know if it'll be a Monday or Tuesday, or if they'll push it back a few weeks. Do you have anything to say about the game?
Yeah, obviously we don't know what's going to happen here, but I think if this game happens this week, which is what the NFL wants to do, according to Adam Schefter, they want to play it on Sunday or Monday if possible. But I imagine that's more of a if everything checks out, fine, they'll do that. But I mean, they also are in a position where if they needed to move this game to week 7, they could do that and then push the Steelers-Ravens game back 1 week, because the Steelers and Ravens have a mutual bye in week 8. So I think if this game is played this week, though, I'm all over the Steelers, because the Titans aren't going to be able to practice. They're going to be very scared for their teammates and worried about what's going on, worried about the virus and if they're going to end up getting it. And then meanwhile, you've got injured dudes like A.J. Brown who aren't going to be able to get into the facility to progress in their rehab. So you just don't know how they're going to progress in that regard, and he might not be able to play. And then meanwhile, I think the Steelers are just a really, really solid team overall. They're well balanced, and I think the Titans are overrated a bit anyway. So I favored the Steelers before any of this happened. So I'll stick with them because the distraction factor there. And Kenny, I promise I'll try not to let Walt. I almost called you Wally. I have no idea why, but I won't let him bully me into changing my bets too much.
WallyFootball.com. That'd be a nice spin-off site. I agree. I like the Steelers quite a bit. So the Titans have struggled against the pass the past couple of weeks. They couldn't stop Gardner Minshew. They couldn't stop Kirk Cousins. And Ben Roethlisberger has been improving every week. Deontay Johnson is injured, so that kind of plays a factor. But the Steelers have so much talent at receiver. Chase Claypool is going to get more targets this week, which is good. The Titans also struggle against the run. You have Dalvin Cook almost running for 200 yards last week. And then Tennessee, we don't know if Adoree Jackson comes back, that'll definitely help Tennessee. But they're also going to be potentially missing Taylor Lewan, which is a big deal. He got hurt against the Vikings. And, I feel like the Titans were very lucky to win that game. Actually, you could say they were lucky to win every single game this year. They're 3 kicks away from being 0-3. I don't like the Titans at all. I think they're overrated at considering the record. I like their coach. I like how well they're coached. I'll say that. But against a good team like the Steelers, I just don't think they're going to win if they play this game. So who knows what happened? And Kenny. Kenny's saying that I shouldn't bully you changing your bets, but we have a joint super contest entry together, so we have to have at least some sort of a discussion. So there you go with that. All right, next game is I didn't type this out yet. So next game is the final game of the early slate. It's Ravens at the Redskins. The sign open up. Ravens -13, and it's still -13 despite what happened Monday night. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Ravens, and I would have liked them maybe even less if they had won on Monday night. But I love them now that they've lost because they're going to be really mad that they lost primetime against the Chiefs, and they're going to want to come out and really punch their next opponent in the mouth because they really didn't play all that well. That first half, they couldn't do anything on offense, and their defense was just picked apart by Patrick Mahomes. And now they're going to Washington to take on the football team, who's 1-2. They just lost by 14 to Cleveland in a game that Washington really played almost as well as they could, except they turned the ball over 5 times. They're going to have a lot more trouble against Lamar Jackson because they're going to be without Matt Ioannidis, who's out for the season on their defensive line, possibly Chase Young, who's been excellent to start the year. So that's 2 defensive linemen that might be out. They have great depth there, but still you're talking about 2 of their very key pass rushers. And anytime you're taking on Lamar Jackson, you need people who can get into the backfield and kind of disrupt him. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that quite enough in this game. I think Jackson might be able to run wild if he can get around the defensive line. Troy Apke and Landon Collins have been missing tackles like crazy at the safety position. So Jackson could have a 70-yard touchdown run. And then on the other side of the ball for Washington, Dwayne Haskins just has not looked good this year. And I don't think he's going to stand a chance against this Ravens defense. So I'm on the Ravens -13 for 1 to 2 units. I hate betting on massive numbers too much, but this is one that I feel pretty safe betting on because I do not think Washington can compete with Baltimore at all.
Yeah, I don't see how they're going to do it. It seems like such a big mismatch. And the Ravens, their defense, the way they're built, they have to blitz a lot because they don't really have the pass rushers. But and it didn't work against Mahomes, who's amazing against the blitz. But you have Dwayne Haskins, who's very inexperienced, and he doesn't see the field right now. He's misreading stuff. His accuracy is pretty bad too. So as bad as it could have been, there were other passes that he threw that could have been intercepted in that game against the Browns too. So and that was against the Cleveland secondary that is, solid. They're okay. They're not as good as Baltimore. So I just feel like the Redskins are going to have a ton of problems moving the chains in this game. Brandon Sheriff's going to be out again. So I think without Sheriff, the Redskins might have the worst offensive line in the NFL. So the Ravens should be able to do whatever they want in the trenches on that side of the ball. And, with Ioannidis out and Chase Young potentially out, that's the strength of the Redskins. So they may not have that. So I feel like the Ravens should dominate this game. And you're talking about how this line seems a little too high. And at first glance, you're like, 13. I don't want to bet that. I don't know if it's high enough. I was looking at the computer model and my eyes popped out of my head when I saw it. The computer thinks this line should be -20. So it's a touchdown. It's a touchdown shy of that. So I mean, the Ravens look great here. usually you don't want to bet on teams coming off bad Monday night losses because they won't have the amount of time they need to make adjustments. But I think that's not the case with the Ravens. Like they're one of the best teams in the league. They just matched up poorly against the Chiefs, and I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to rebound, and I think they're going to be focused.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. They don't need to really make adjustments. Just their game plan didn't work against the Chiefs, but it sure as hell should work against Washington because they are just not very good right now. They're well coached, and they're going to find some guys to fill in long-term roles on this team. But I mean, we've seen it the last couple of weeks. Ron Rivera hasn't even been using his timeouts late in like 2-possession games to try to get the ball back. He knows that this is a rebuilding year, so I can't imagine Baltimore not crushing Washington.
Yeah. Real quick question for you because you cover the Redskins. If the Redskins get the second pick in the draft, do you think they take Justin Fields and just quit on the Haskins experiment?
That's a good question. I think they could consider it, but Ron Rivera is so dead set about taking the best player available that it wouldn't surprise me if he likes, say, Penei Sewell, the left tackle from Oregon, enough. He may say, like, let's build up the offensive line. Let's see if Alex Smith can play. And even if we want to give up on Dwayne Haskins, if Alex Smith can't play and Haskins can't play, we have Kyle Allen and we can sign a veteran and just go one more kind of rebuilding year and then try to find a quarterback. But I would not rule out them taking a quarterback when Haskins doesn't show any growth.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I guess it really depends on how Haskins plays. But I think if they get the number one pick, they definitely take Trevor Lawrence. I think every team that gets the first pick takes Lawrence, except for the Bengals because they have Burrow and the Dolphins because they have Tua. So that's how I think it's going to unravel. All right. Before we get to the late games, again, please hit subscribe or the like button on YouTube. It would mean a lot to us. And we're sending this link out to help promote the podcast. We really appreciate it. All right. We have 3 late afternoon games. The first one is the Giants at the Rams. The line open up Rams -10, and it shot up all the way to 13. So who do you like in this game?
Oh, man, I don't like myself for liking the Giants in this one, but I have written down right now. And part of it is just the line moving 3 points and being this high. It just doesn't seem right to me. Like, I know the Giants are bad, but and they couldn't keep up with the banged up 49ers. They lost by 21. And, the Rams probably should have won and covered against Buffalo, but got screwed by a phantom PI call late in the game. The Rams have allowed 18 points per game to NFC East opponents with better offenses than the Giants. So there's all these things going against the Giants, but I still think this number is too high just on the off chance that the Giants kind of hang around and the Rams keep them at an arm's distance. And then Daniel Jones gets some sort of garbage drive at the end of the game to, cut the deficit to like 10 or 11 points. Like I could totally see that happening. Because I do think that there are enough passing weapons in the Giants offense that they can move the ball at least a little on the Rams secondary. Because the Rams were beaten pretty badly by Josh Allen last week. Granted, that's a better and more well-rounded offense, but I still feel like the Giants should be able to move the ball. They just haven't yet, and they've turned it over too much. But if they avoid turnovers, I feel like they'll be able to cover this. Now, I have no confidence in this, so I'm not going to bet it. But for office pool purposes, I would be on the Giants plus 13 here, just banking on garbage time at this point. And also banking on – oh, actually, no, that would not work. I was going to say, my theory that if the Rams crush the Giants, that they'll be favored far too much against this week. But if the Giants cover, that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, this is a tough one to bet. Or kind of decide even because I think you can make good cases for each team or rather like good cases not to bet each team. Like, for the Giants, they could get that backdoor cover that you were talking about. They got the backdoor cover against the Bears in week 2. Yeah, and that was when Saquon Barkley wasn't on the field because they just came back in the second half. So we've seen that they can do that, and the Bears have a good defense. They have a better defense than the Rams do. So Daniel Jones could definitely get something going in the fourth quarter to get to within 10, and then so that could certainly happen. But then the case for the Rams for picking the Rams is that you have Sean McVay versus Joe Judge. And, maybe Joe Judge turns into a good coach eventually, but right now it doesn't look like it. I mean, the Niners are missing 10 starters and they couldn't be competitive. So I don't know if that was on Joe Judge or maybe Jason Garrett. Maybe you blame him for only scoring 9 points against a team missing 5 defensive starters. So there's something bad on the coaching staff right now for the Giants. Probably Garrett, but maybe Judge too. The Rams have a tremendous coaching advantage, and then you also have to wonder how many turnovers Daniel Jones is going to commit when Aaron Donald's bearing down on him. So this could get very ugly. This could be 31-0 by halftime. On the other hand, the Giants could cover, like I said. So right now, I'm going to take the Giants plus 13. This is a high number. The advanced line was minus 9.5. So we're getting 3.5 points of value with the key number of 10. So that's why I'm taking the Giants. But depending on what the injury report looks like, I might switch to the Rams. So I'm not very confident at all, as you can tell.
Yeah, this is one of my least favorite picks on the slate. I just hate double-digit spreads against teams that I feel like at least have something good about them. But at the same time, the Giants have just not been well coached. I think your coaching argument makes a ton of sense. It wouldn't surprise me if the Rams won this like 42-3, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Rams won this 31-24 and the Giants cover. But I mean, I think either way, I would be surprised if the Giants win, but I think a cover's not out of the question. So I'm with you on the Giants here, but this is a no bet for me for sure.
Yeah, same. All right, next game, the Patriots at the Chiefs. This line opened up Chiefs minus 7.5. It's down to 7. Can't really say it's a revenge game for the AFC Championship because the Chiefs got the revenge last year. But I guess we're back at the scene of the crime if you think about it. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm on the Patriots here a little bit. There's a case to be made for both teams in this one again. But I think there are a couple key factors for me. I think the 24 extra hours for Bill Belichick is a big plus. I know Patrick Mahomes is playing really, really well, but I still have faith that Bill Belichick's going to scheme up something to keep this one closer, even if Kansas City wins. I think also New England has the secondary needed to cover Mahomes' weapons. So it's about whether or not they can get home with their pass rush. Which is, there's some question there, but I do think that they have enough talent on defense to make some of this happen. And I think the other part of it is on the other side of the ball. The Patriots are going to be getting some running back reinforcements back. I think Damian Harris might be reactivated from IR this week. That's something to watch. I'm not positive he will be, but if he is, that's going to add another element to that backfield. And they won't have to use J.J. Taylor and Rex Burkhead nearly as much as they've been using them. I mean, Burkhead had his Rex Burkhead game of the year where he gets 3 touchdowns and almost 100 yards. It happens every year. Everyone freaks out, and then he does nothing the rest of the year. So we've kind of already used that. So I'm expecting if Harris comes, will be helpful. Also, I don't know if James White's coming back. Hopefully, he'll come back soon, just for his own sake, however he's doing. He may be away from the team for a while, though, so it's something to watch there, but he could be back. So if they have their full complement of running backs, I think they can do some damage against the Chiefs. But I think this game all comes down to Cam Newton, too. If he plays well, the Patriots are going to cover. If he can, the team becomes one-dimensional, and they really have to rely more on their run game, and Cam can't pass as well. Or can't or has to scramble too much like Lamar Jackson did the other night, then I think we're going to be talking about the Chiefs covering. But I'm taking the chance on Cam and the Patriots in this one. So I'm on them plus 7 just for 1 unit because I don't like betting against Patrick Mahomes when he's this hot. But I do think Belichick and the Patriots can cover. I don't think they'll win, though.
Yeah, I had the same thought process as you, but I'm actually taking the Chiefs. But I'm not betting this game. I could definitely see the Patriots covering or maybe getting a backdoor cover. Like Cam Newton is certainly capable of that. I just don't want to go against Patrick Mahomes right now, especially if he's motivated. And like I said before, he did get his revenge, but he still remembers that game. And Mahomes is, he's a great guy, but he has that sort of like Michael Jordan killer instinct where like if he's pissed, like he's gonna take it out on you on the field. And I still think he wants to beat the Patriots, especially at home where they defeated them to kind of deny him a second Super Bowl that he would have had already. Because I definitely think they would have beaten the Rams. So I think that the Patriots don't quite have the pass rush to get to Mahomes. Like I was talking about how you beat these elite quarterbacks is you need to get to the quarterback very consistently, like the 49ers did in the Super Bowl, and then cover well underneath. The Patriots obviously can cover well underneath. They have a great secondary, but I don't think they have quite the pass rush. I know Chase Winovich got the strip sack on Derek Carr, but I just don't see it happening for the Patriots getting to Mahomes, and even if they do, that he will scramble on the rare occasions that it happens. So that's why I'm taking the Chiefs. I think they win this one by about 10. The computer model says this line should be 7.5. So a slight value there. But like I said before, I could definitely see Cam Newton getting in the backdoor cover. So it's a tough one, and I'm not going to bet this game.
Yeah, I'm definitely not super confident in this. For me, the biggest thing is the 24 extra hours to prepare for Belichick. I just think that's going to give him the time needed to sort of cook up a way to get some pressure on Mahomes, whatever that may be. Because I know they don't have a lot of big name guys on that line, but they do have some guys that can get pressure. They just got to get them in the right situation. But I'll be interested to see how this game goes, though, because, I mean, we saw Andy Reid came ready to play against Ball last night with that nice little fullback touchdown to Anthony Sherman and all sorts of crazy trick plays. So we can just see what he has up his sleeve for Bell this week. This is going to be an all-time coaching matchup, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, the Eric Fisher touchdown too. That was pretty wild. I actually would have cashed my my DraftKings lineup if Demarcus Robinson got a touchdown. So I was pretty salty that Fisher got the touchdown over Robinson, who I didn't even see the Robinson on the field, which is pretty tilting. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Last game in the late afternoon slate, the Bills at the Raiders. The line opened up -1.5. It's all the way up to 3. So who do you like in this game?
I still like the Bills. I don't know why their win would move the line by 1.5. I guess maybe it would have to do more with the Raiders losing by a lot to the Patriots, because I do think I've said this all year, I think the Bills are very similar to the Patriots as a team, at least in terms of how they stack up on defense and a little bit on offense. And I think that the Bills defense is going to be able to contain the Raiders offense. Just the same way we saw the Patriots do it, take away the run, take away Darren Waller, and make Derek Carr make plays to somebody else. And that's really the reason the Patriots emerged victoriously. I think the Bills will be able to do that. Of course, they're going to have to play better in the second half than they did last week, because they were up huge on the Rams. They'd only allowed 3 points in the first half. They let the Rams come all the way back to the point that the Rams should have won that game. And frankly speaking, I don't exactly even understand how it happened. So Sean McDermott has to make that a teachable moment, like just get his secondary back 7 linebackers to play a little bit better in that moment. But I do think they have the personnel to beat the Raiders. I think that the matchup on offense for the Bills is too good too, because they have Devin Singletary, and the Raiders are terrible against the run. Then you have Josh Allen. He's got a ton of weapons, so you can make some play action stuff happen. Allen will make plays with his legs. So I like the Bills -3 for a couple units. I think they just ultimately emerge victoriously in this one. I think by a field goal, it's possible. So, and I kind of think the Raiders are going to come back down to earth a little bit after they kind of had me questioning, like, oh, is this team better than I thought they were? I think the answer to that is if you contain Josh Jacobs and Waller, then I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think if you take away all motivational angles and stuff like that, I would definitely agree with you. I think the Bills match up well against the Raiders. So that needs to be said. But, sometimes the better team doesn't always win. And there's definitely a strong motivational edge for the Raiders in this game. It's twofold. One, the Bills had that, dramatic last-second win against the Rams, and it was a statement game for sure. Like, they wanted to say that they're the better team. The Rams came in with so much hype. Everyone was saying the Rams are a top 5 team. No one was talking about the Bills, and the Bills wanted to prove that they were legit Super Bowl contenders, which I think they are. And they ended up winning that game, and it was a tight win. So they had to celebrate that game. Next week they played the Titans, and the Titans are undefeated. So that's gonna be a big game. In between that, this Raiders matchup, and I think it's gonna be a little tricky. The second reason I think that the Bills or the Raiders have a big motivational edge is something that, like, I guess none of us know. is like how big of an advantage is Las Vegas going to be for the Raiders? Because it can be very distracting. Like I've compared Las Vegas to the spam folder in your email box. Like there's like so many things coming at you, like so loud. And like how distracted are the Bills going to be, especially off that win? Maybe they'll want to party or gamble a lot and like go to Fremont, like in Old Vegas. Like there's a lot of fun to have down there. And, you know, I can see the Bills maybe partying a little too much. So that's a concern for me. Also, I think a very likely result of this game is the Bills winning by 3. So it's important to have the +3. If this were -2.5, I might actually think twice about it. But with Raiders +3 being available, I'm going to take the +3 and kind of bank on the Raiders having this great home field advantage in Vegas.
The Vegas point is a very good one, and that's actually one of the reasons I think we saw in their first year as an expansion team, the Vegas Golden Knights, you know, kind of power through the Western Conference in the NHL. So I could definitely see the Bills coming in and getting distracted there. But I'm going to stick with the Bills just because I think the matchup is there. But your motivational points make a ton of sense. So it wouldn't surprise me entirely if the Raiders do cover or beat the Bills here. So I may drop my unit count from 2 to 1, but I'm going to stick with the Bills because I'm not a believer in the Raiders. They're going to have to show me more, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I'm sure as well. It's worth noting that the only -2.5 I see is at Pinnacle. And Pinnacle is the sharpest book anywhere, and they want Bills action. So that kind of says something to me about like what they think. Like obviously that could change, so we'll see. Real quick question: do you guys play teasers? I mess this a lot, and teasers are, you know, they're called teasers for a reason. Like they seem so easy, and you're like, oh, how can I possibly lose this? And you usually end up losing. The only way I like a teaser is if you have to go through 3, 6, and 7. It doesn't matter which way you go. You have to get through those numbers. That's the only way it mathematically makes sense. So you get a +2.5 and take it all the way up to 8.5, or conversely, you get -8.5, take it down to -2.5. That's the smart way to do a teaser, but you have to get 3, 6, and 7. So
yeah, my friend Chris is playing a teaser this week. On the Bucks and the Seahawks, I think. But I think you got them both at -6.5, so they just have to win. So basically, it's an even money line bet that both of those teams win. But
yeah, that's something I don't like, is because let's just say Seattle is -7.5 and you got -1.5. I would like that a lot more because you're getting 7. But here you're only getting 6 and 3. So I don't think the math adds up to that being a good bet. Like it could obviously win for sure. I just think like mathematically you're not getting good odds with that.
Yeah, I think those two teams hypothetically should win. So I like it, but there's always you're right. That's why they're called teasers. They always look so great on paper, and then you don't hit them. I do play weird teasers every week, though. I take like 7 of our picks and just tease them to see if anything will happen. I put like $1 on it. I did hit 2 of those this year, so
nice.
But that's just because our picks have been ridiculous. So I assume I will just be setting my money on fire most of the time in the future.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully we continue this hot streak that we have going. All right, Sunday night, Eagles at the 49ers. The line to open up. Eagles or 49ers -5.5, it's up to 7. So who do you like in this game?
So this game's weird because it feels like a really bad overreaction to the 49ers crushing the Giants and the Eagles tying the Bengals. But like I need to see the injury report for both teams because both teams are really badly banged up. Like the Eagles might be without their top 5 or 6 offensive linemen at this point. I have lost track. It's absolutely ridiculous. But then the 49ers may be starting Nick Mullins at quarterback again and maybe down 2 running backs, 3 defensive linemen, 2 cornerbacks. The list goes on. So there's just so many injuries in this game in general that makes me not really want to bet this until I see the injury report. If Nick Mullins is starting and the Eagles aren't as banged up as we think they are, I'll probably be on the Eagles because I just think this is way too many points to give to a Nick Mullins-led team without a lot of offensive weapons around him. But at the same time, the Eagles have played so poorly and they don't have any pass blocking up front. So If it comes out that like Jason Peters can't play and there are some other injuries in the receiving core, then I might be on the 49ers here. So I'm going to cop out and say I'm not betting this game right now, and I'm leaning the Eagles a little bit, but that could very easily change late in the week.
I like the Niners a lot. Obviously the injury report is important. But based on what we saw, like how many players they gotten hurt against the Bengals, Jason Peters went down, which is just enormous. They're already down two linemen. I guess like basically one because they signed Peters in reaction to the Brandon Brooks injury. So if they're down Peters and one of their guards, it's still, I know the Niners are down multiple defensive linemen, but they still have some talent up front with Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw. So they should be able to get to Carson Wentz. And just Wentz is just playing so poorly right now. And I don't know what's happened to him. Like he used to be an MVP candidate, and now he can't see the field. He's misreading a lot. His accuracy is not great. So I just think that Carson Wentz is going to have a lot of problems here. Especially if the Niners get some of their players back from injury, we'll see. That's why the injury report is so important. But we do know the Niners are going to get George Kittle back. And Deebo Samuel has a chance to play too. Even just getting George Kittle back, it's going to be a huge boon for the 49ers because the Eagles can't stop tight ends. And we're talking about like Logan Thomas, who had a great week one. Like, how they're going to stop George Kittle? It just seems like too much of an advantage. The Niners, despite their injuries, they're still playing well. Like they're still very well coached by Kyle Shanahan. So I think they can beat the Eagles by more than a touchdown. The Eagles can't even beat the Bengals at home. Like, how are they going to contend with the 49ers? They couldn't beat the Redskins in week one. Like, how are they going to beat the 49ers? So I think the 49ers win. This is going to be an ugly blowout. I apologize, Kenny, but maybe it's for the best. Maybe the Eagles get a great pick in the draft.
Yeah, I well may end up with you at this point. I just have to see what the injury report looks like. There's just something that doesn't sit well with me about betting a team with like 40 injuries on it, like the 49ers, but the Eagles might be that bad. So, oh man, I'm going to look hard into this. I'll probably tweet out my official pick later, but this is one of those sides of the week that I'm like, I don't think that I want to bet this game, but it might make sense for me to go against what I actually think.
Yeah, I get like the trepidation behind like not betting Nick Mullins at -7. I think 7 is okay though. Like if the Niners are favored by 13 or 14, like kind of like we saw Mason Rudolph, I think that line was 14.5 against the Dolphins on Monday night last year. Like you definitely don't bet Nick Mullins as a 14.5 point favorite, but I think 7 is fine. Just the Eagles are just so bad. Like. They lost or they didn't win against two bad teams who have a combined record of 1-4-1 right now, and then they get blown out by the Rams at home. Like that's the good team they played, and the Niners I think are just as good as the Rams right now. They obviously maybe a little bit worse with their injuries, but I think they're on the same level. They're very well coached, and I think they're just going to be ready to slaughter the Eagles.
My favorite part about this, though, and it just occurred to me, is how close the Eagles are to being first place in their division.
I know.
That division is so bad.
Well, you could say the same thing about the Giants, too. The Giants who lost, 36-9 against the 49ers at home, they're one game out of first place. So every team's still alive somehow.
It's insane.
I know. It's crazy. All right. Monday night game, Falcons at the Packers. This line opened up Packers -6. It's up to 7.5. Tons of public money coming in on Green Bay, as you might expect. So who do you like in this game?
I don't know, actually. I wrote something that I don't think I even agree with. I wrote the Packers, but I think I want to be on the Falcons because we're moving through two key numbers, first of all. And second of all, I just think Matt Ryan has the chance for a backdoor cover. I know the Packers have been great this year. I've been all over them the first 3 games, and they've proven me right. They're one of two teams that are 3-0 against the spread, the other being the Seahawks. So as much as I want to go back to the Packers because I've picked those two teams every time and it's worked out well, I just have some concerns about their ability to cover because they were unable to contain the Saints offense on Sunday night, except for that Taysom Hill fumble for the most part. And I feel like the Falcons offense is pretty good, provided that Julio Jones comes back from injury. Now, that's probably the number one reason I had Packers written down here at first, is because if Julio Jones and Russell Gage are out, then you're talking about stacked receiver injuries at a position of strength for the Falcons. And I feel like, at least with Jair Alexander and focusing on Calvin Ridley, then the Packers would have a chance of slowing down the rest of the Falcons offense. But I think Jones might come back this week, and if he does, I just think that the Falcons should have a chance to cover there. So I'm not making a unit count on this till I see the injury report, and I could have a pick switch here. But if Julio Jones plays, I'm going to be on the Falcons at plus 7.5. If both he and Russell Gage are out, I'm probably going to end up going with the Packers, just because I think taking away one of the biggest strengths of the Falcons is definitely going to hurt them, because you don't want to see Olamide Zaccheaus have to play too much. Sorry to my Virginia Wahoos fans. I know there are some of you out here who might be watching that. That's for you, Ken.
Nice. I completely agree with what you said. The injury report is huge in this game. And I mentioned the teams struggling with the number one receivers out. I don't think I mentioned the Falcons without Julio Jones last week. It's another one. It's really amazing how these teams just completely changed without these number one receivers. And I know how well Calvin Ridley has played, but I mean, Julio Jones is still Julio Jones, and like he's still the number one guy there. Like his presence is so important. So if he can play and he has an extra day to get healthier, which is important. If he's on the field, that changes a lot for the Falcons, and I think that they can get that backdoor cover that you were talking about. Matt Ryan as an underdog of this many points, or any very good to great quarterback getting this many points, usually a good bet. Matt Ryan as an underdog of 7.5 or more since his second year is 7-3 against the spread. So a 70% covering rate. I know it's not a big sample size, but it makes a lot of sense because the backdoor cover is always going to be there for these very talented quarterbacks. And if he has all of his weapons, or at least Jones and Ridley, I think they should do well. And I think Hayden Hurst could have a good game too. I don't know how the Packers their linebacking core is still a little bit of a question mark. So I think that could do well. And also, if the Falcons can somehow keep this close, we've seen what running backs can do against the Packers defense, dating back to the NFC Championship. So if somehow the Falcons keep this game close, I think they'll be, I don't want to say they're going to be in position to win outright, but I think they can have a chance, like a very slight chance. That said, it is scary to go against Aaron Rodgers when he's this motivated. So it's not going to be a high unit count, maybe like 1 or 2 units. But if Julio Jones is going to play, I'm definitely going to be on the Falcons.
Yeah, I'm glad you're on the same side in this. It just makes too much sense. Like, I think this is going to be an entertaining game too. I think it's going to be a lot of points in this one, a lot of passing yards. So I'm looking forward to this one very much. But I think that I do think the Falcons are the right side, provided that Julio Jones plays. But if he's out, I'll definitely change my tune and go with the Packers. If this line was different, I'd definitely be on the Packers. But moving through 2 key numbers was huge for that spread.
Yeah, and the advanced line on the game was 5.5. So we moved through 2 key numbers from that perspective as well. So yeah, it is. Matt Ryan getting this many points does seem appealing a little bit at least. All right, survivor pick. So we I believe we had the Browns last week, and that won, or at least I had the Browns. I can't remember who you had. Do you remember?
I have no idea who I had last week. I know I picked someone different than you. Did I pick? I couldn't have picked the Colts. I already picked the Colts week 1 and lost. I don't remember. Maybe
the Patriots. I don't know. But yeah, either way, I think the team I want to go with this week is the Rams. They're at home. They're playing the Giants. The Giants just lost 36-9 at home against the 49ers, a team missing 10 starters. I don't see how they beat the Rams. So that's my pick for this week.
I did the Buccaneers over the Broncos last week. That's what it was. Okay. I just looked back. This week, I agree with you. I think Rams-Giants is a good one. I'll be going with the Ravens over Washington. I just think that's another 13-point spread in that game. I cannot imagine a situation in which Washington wins that game, and I still have the Ravens open, so I'll be going with them for hypothetical purposes in this, since we are both eliminated from Survivor for the most part because of the Eagles pick or the Colts pick in week 1. Man. Yeah, no, I do that every year. I think like I have remarkable consistency with Survivor being eliminated week 1 and March Madness, my projected champion, losing in the first weekend. It's stunning how bad I am at that.
That is so tilting because it especially wasn't Thursday night. Like, we were watching the Jaguars lose to the Dolphins, and I was thinking, like, how in the world did the Jaguars beat the Colts? Like, especially the Colts, like, clobbering the Vikings the next week, and then on Sunday they beat the Jets easily. Like, how does that happen? Like, of course, I did mention, though, I betus.com, you were allowed to rebuy back in once. So I'm still alive there. It's the only Survivor pool I'm in. So I think I'll be going with the Rams, but I like your pick of the Ravens as well. Definitely worth considering that too. Especially if the Rams have some bad injuries, I think I might switch to the Ravens as well. So it's something to look out for. All right, that's about it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can head over to sportingnews.com, go over to the fantasy section. We've got all sorts of rankings this week, DraftKings lineup, FanDuel lineups. We even have Yahoo fantasy lineups too, so you can check those out. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I've been good about tweeting my picks, and my Twitter picks record is very good. I think I have 3 losses of I think I've tweeted out 15. I'll tweet every primetime pick and any pick changes I have this week, especially that being important because of the injury reports. So check me out there at Jacob Camenker. Tweet at me with football questions. I'm always happy to talk about it.
Real quick about the Yahoo fantasy. A lot of people don't even know they have fantasy DFS. But usually, like, their contests or whatever, but like once in a while they have a great offer where there's like amazing overlay. Like, that's just something to look out for. I know they had it on Black Friday for basketball. They'll have that sometimes. So it's definitely something to watch out for. So you can get great deals that way. Anyway, I'm at walserfootball.com. We're going to pick updates throughout the week as usual. My 2021 NFL mock draft will be updated Wednesday morning. Charlie is, he's bringing it with all the great NFL draft content, like stock reports, big board, prospect ranking update. He's going to have his mock draft update on Friday. So check that out as well. But yeah, otherwise I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right, bye.